Welcome to the Avenue podcast, and in this special episode I get to have a conversation with Dave Ferguson, the CEO of Exponential and a church planter who has planted churches on many levels. I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Avenue podcast, Dave. We are actually so privileged to have you on this podcast today and to inspire a younger generation. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you very much, Jeremy. It's a privilege to be on, and it's always fun to be with you.
Oh, thank you so much. And for those of you who don't know Dave, he is the CEO of Exponential, which is essentially a global church planting movement across the world, which champions disciple making and church planting in different contexts. And before that, he has also been the founder of Community Church, a multi-campus church in Chicago, which has also helped to plant many other churches through initiatives such as New Thing. Is this a pretty good summary of your life and what you're up to, Dave?
That is a pretty good summary. And then occasionally I get to write books and speak.
Yes, that's right. Of course. Yes. And that's how many people have known you for books like Hero Maker, Bless, and Multiplier is your new book, which we will talk a little bit about today. So yeah, Dave, you've put your life into multiplying God's kingdom and to shift the scorecard for churches and leaders around the world from addition to multiplication. But before Exponential ever came along, do you have like a defining moment in your childhood, in your youth, in your young adulthood that helped shape this call to be a multiplier in your life?
There's a couple things that come to mind. One that immediately comes to mind as you asked me that question. So I was a freshman in college. So 18, just turned 19. And I started wrestling with the question of what are you going to trade your life for? Which is kind of seems like a pretty big question for a teenager. But I mean, I was really kind of like, and I don't know why, but that was just kind of rattling around in my brain going like, hey, you're going to trade your life for something. Either you can, some people all at once as a martyr, or over the course of 85 years, one day at a time. And the challenge in my head was like, you ought to be intentional about that. What are you going to trade your life for? And the more I thought about it, I just kind of got to this place where the way I word it is if I could help people find their way back to God, if I could help people find and follow Jesus, that would probably be the best trade for my life. And then I started asking, well, what's the best way to help people find and follow Jesus? And I was like, well, probably through a church. And then as I started thinking this, and I'm kind of wired more like an entrepreneur or even kind of apostolic. And so I was like, well, if you want to help the most people find and follow Jesus, why would you start one church? You ought to start a church that starts churches. And so ultimately I ended up backing my way into it. Like, so the heartbeat is really kind of around evangelism and outreach, but the strategy was through church multiplication. And so it really was. It was like as a freshman, and I was probably like somewhere around freshman year, that first or second semester, just wrestling with that question. I kind of said, okay, that's exactly what I want to do. And began to try to figure that out.
So did you have like a family environment or a church context that was about like multiplication, helping people find their way back to God, that sort of infused itself into you?
Yeah. So when I was 4, my mom and dad moved to Chicago to plant a church.
Right.
So like some of my earliest memories are like setting up folding chairs in a gym at Blackhawk Elementary School. So like just talking about church and church leadership and that kind of stuff was just kind of like normal banter, around the kitchen table. So definitely was nurtured in that. And then the church that I was a part of as a kid, which one my mom and dad planted, it was a very positive environment, very evangelistic. They would see sometimes as many as 100 people get baptized in a year. So, and it actually grew to be fairly large. I mean, like 1,000 people. But what was interesting is I did kind of resent that all the people in the church thought I'd be a pastor.
Okay.
So when it got to that question of what are you going to trade your life for, that story I just told, I really didn't want to be a pastor. So that's how I kind of had to In fact, for a long time, I didn't even call myself a pastor. I called myself a spiritual entrepreneur because I was like starting new things that would help people find their way
Sure.
back to God. I just didn't like the notion. Yeah, there were a lot of things about being a pastor just didn't seem like who I was.
Sure.
But yeah, it was very much kind of almost in the DNA.
Right. So when did you start actually owning that label as a pastor, or did you ever own it?
Wow, that's a great question. Because like early on, when I was first even like when first on social media and Twitter and stuff like that,
Yeah.
like literally on there, instead of pastor, I'd put spiritual entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And if you came to community, almost nobody ever called me pastor. They would just call me Dave.
That's so good though.
So yeah, I'm not sure I don't
All right,
I haven't
we'll
thought
still
about it.
call
But
you a
I'm
spiritual
not sure I've
entrepreneur.
ever thought. I don't think I ever owned the title.
Yeah, no, I totally resonate with that though, because the pastoral.
Why is that?
Because for me, I resonate with the fact that I've never really seen myself as someone to just maybe shepherd a church, to just be there and to cater to the needs of people. But I really like starting new things. I
Yes.
remember just being a kid and trying to come up with new games to play with my friends, and also from a young age, like being involved in starting ministries as well. So that was what really made me tick, rather than being assigned to a church and having to shepherd that church, I suppose.
Yeah, because I think when I heard the word pastor, like especially
Yeah.
even as a kid, as a young adult, the first thing I thought of was like going and visiting people in the hospital.
Exactly.
And that's good, and somebody ought to do it. But like, I didn't really want to do that for my whole life, and so
Exactly.
I think partly, and this may be pride. I think partly I also didn't want that to be my identity. Like, oh, that's the guy that goes and visits sick people in the hospital. I don't know, which would be a good thing.
Exactly. It's a good thing, but it's maybe not the call that God's put on your life.
Maybe that's why me and you hit it off. Maybe we're just wired or gifted very similar in that way.
Yeah, I just remember reading your book and I was like, man, this guy, he gets it, and it just resonated with it so much. So when I saw you at the conference, I was like, I have to talk to Dave. So
and I was glad you did, because I remember I think it was the first time we met, because it was like you and there was like 6 other people that were part of all your micro churches, and I was just like, I mean, I had the same feeling. I was like, I got to talk to this guy, because how does he at 21 already started micro churches that are multiplying with people, many of them who aren't even 20 yet. I mean, but now too, you know what's interesting? And you probably already know this, but when I was in Africa, and of course in Africa, it's a very young continent. And it was a conference there, and I don't know why I didn't do the homework on this, but there's a lot of solid theology that tells us that probably most of the disciples were teenagers, except maybe Peter.
Right. Yeah, he was married, and
So in some ways, what you were doing even then, that should be more the norm.
That's the norm. That should be the normative. Yeah.
It should be.
100%.
Yes.
Exactly.
I ran into somebody last week who was like, he'd been a Christian for 4 years, and he was training church planters for his church, but his denomination wouldn't let him plant a church because he was 29. They said you had to be 30 before you could plant a church, because that's when Jesus started his earthly ministry, when he was 30.
That is really interesting. I've never heard that one before.
Man, to my opinion, it's kind of lame. I mean, because Jesus picked people who are teenagers.
Exactly. It's like, what happens when you get your birthday at the age of 30? Like, what happens?
You become like Jesus.
Holy Spirit rests on you like a dove, and then you're ready to go out. Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, like, when I first met you, I was really taken with that, and then later on, being in Africa, I was like, no, I think what you said, that should be normative.
Yeah. And so you love multiplication. That's at the heart of everything you do. Why is that something that is so important, rather than just adding seats and doing hospital visits and just going through the motions of church?
I think for me, I just see a real connection between multiplication at every level, multiplying disciples, multiplying leaders, multiplying churches, even multiplying networks. I see a real connection between that and then also accomplishing the Jesus mission. What you see in Acts 1:8, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, ends of the earth. the only way that's ever going to happen is if there's multiplication. And so for me, that just becomes very clear, and that's probably why I'm really passionate about it.
Yeah. And it being at the heart of scripture and
Oh yeah. I mean, right there in Genesis, it starts at the beginning, be fruitful and multiply. And it's all the way through.
Exactly. And with the landscape of church planting at the moment, and things are shifting, culture is shifting, and I know for you yourself, you've been particularly interested in microchurches as a model of church as well. And with Community Church, which was the church that you founded, you started to have expressions of microchurches within Community Church as well. So what do you see about microchurches in the broader landscape of church planning from what you've observed so far?
Yeah, maybe a little bit about the story for us. I mean, we were, it was during COVID, and I know in Melbourne, you guys were shut down for almost 2 years, weren't you?
Yeah, it was rough. 2 years of pretty much only being able to go outside of your house for 1 hour.
Yeah, which was
it was ridiculous.
Brutal.
Yeah.
In Chicago, where I am in the United States, I mean, our church didn't meet for a full year. Okay. So it was not quite as hard, but by other places, it was very, very, very hard. But one of the things that I was challenging leaders with during COVID, I kept telling them, I said, hey, if there's anything you ever wanted to do, you should try it now, because if it doesn't work, you can blame it on COVID. It didn't work. COVID, it ruined it. So I was really encouraging leaders to experiment. And one of the things, and we've done a ton of church planting. We've done a lot of things with multi-site. We've done a lot of different creative things, but we hadn't done anything really with microchurches. And so one of the guys on our team, Rodrigo Cano, I was just texting back and forth with Rodrigo before I got on this podcast.
Yeah, nice.
I challenged Rodrigo. I said, hey, why don't you lead the point for us? And let's really think about how we could start micro churches all across Chicago. And, if we can't be meeting in large groups, we could be in these smaller groups. And I feel like this is it's just a great time for us to begin to experiment and see if it can work. And so our online audience was probably bigger than it had ever been.
Yeah.
And so we kind of made the announcement. We wanted to train people to do micro churches if they were up for it. Well, what we didn't expect is that a number of people who were a part of our online audience from all over the world also said, oh, we would like to try that. Because for some reason, we were just thinking only in Chicago. We forgot that it's the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
And so we started letting, people go through our training. And we literally had, like, for example, we had one guy named Kali who was from India, who was a part of our Community Christian .tv and Community Christian Online. And he's went through our training. It was a lot more. It was like about 10 weeks. And then after 10 weeks, we'd give you ongoing coaching. So he went through that and actually started a microchurch in India. But then he came back with 3 other apprentices, got them trained. And then those 3 all came back with 3 and got them trained. Anyway, if you fast forward now, here we are, 5 years later, we have more than 400 microchurches that are part of Community, but only about a dozen of them are actually in Chicago. The rest of them are across the United States, and even more of them are outside of the United States that we've been able to help start. And basically, we just give them a little bit of upfront training, but then we also give them every month coaching and bring them together in kind of leadership communities so we can encourage and challenge them. And really the credit for this, I was encouraging, but the credit for it goes to Rodrigo, who just did a brilliant job doing that and continues to do a great job with that.
So why do you see it as something that's very valuable when it comes to church planning going forward in the future?
Well, I think one of the things that anybody who's close to the church planning world in the West begins to see that the 2 biggest challenges with what I would call the prevailing model or institutional or more typical church planning, a large model, is it requires a lot of money, and it also requires probably really a high capacity leader. So it's probably the kind of leader that can do that can raise that amount of money and lead it, something that size is there's a lot fewer of them. And so all of a sudden you come along with a micro church and you're going, hold it. So this may not even cost any money. Like I could have like a real job and I could do this as a part of my ministry and reach people that I'm really passionate about. So I mean, in some ways three things come to mind. One is the economics of it make a lot of sense because it's scalable. So it's movemental. So you can accomplish the mission.
Yeah.
Secondly, there's a lot more people that could lead a microchurch than maybe lead a church of, 100 or 200 or 1,000. So you have a lot more people that can be mobilized for that. And I think the last thing is that I think it's much more in line with what we see probably in the New Testament. So I mean, I'm very excited because I feel like people that are a part of your generation are grabbing a hold of this. But candidly, I feel like it's something that's for any generation and probably is something that, Jesus has longed to see for quite some time.
Definitely. And I think for me, I see my generation as a generation that is craving really genuine community. And they are wanting church not to be a program that they attend, but a community that they can belong to and have a cause that is greater than themselves for. And I think this expression of church I have found to have really resonated with my generation because it creates community in a way that is so unique and so beautiful.
Would you say too, I mean, this has been my observation, that when microchurches are done well, one of the beautiful things about them is they have a very clear mission. And I think sometimes the mission in other churches can kind of get a little fuzzy.
Definitely.
But do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's very clear. It's very important to have a clear mission when it comes to the microchurches, because I think you've mentioned this in the past, but the house church idea has some bad connotations around it sometimes because it's sometimes seen as just the people who hate church and they're not for anything, but they're against everything. So they just gather and the toxicity just brews. But when you have a mission for something that is bigger than yourself and for the world around you and your sphere of influence and your relational streams, then I think that just creates a healthy expression of church that can be reproducible in other spaces as well.
How do you, let's say you have an audience of 50 next gen, we'll say 18 to 24-year-olds. How do you spark interest in them to want to, or to consider starting a microchurch?
Well, we got to do the IC and U conversations, right, Dave?
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah,
you're right.
Honestly, that has been so helpful for me, is having IC and U conversations, helping people to see in themselves what they might not have seen already. And like, that's probably the one thing that has helped me a lot with raising up leaders. And at the moment, we're developing next steps for leaders to go through training modules and all that. But I think it starts with that simple IC and U conversation that helps them have that spark moment where it's like, oh, I didn't realize that I could do that. I didn't realize that God had put that within me. Is that what you found as well?
Yeah, it does. But I mean, I don't know why I didn't think of it when I was asking the question, but that is exactly right. And you know what else I was thinking of? As you said that, I would love to introduce you to a guy named Darian Graves.
Okay.
Darian's a little bit older than you. I think he just turned 30.
Okay,
He's in
cool.
Beaumont, Texas.
Right.
But the same kind of intentionality that you try to use, put towards multiplication, he's one of the most prolific multipliers I've ever been around. And he applies, he uses IC&U. He's very intentional about that. And he sets the bar really high for leadership, but is still very gracious.
Yeah.
Well, after we get off that,
okay, that'd be awesome.
I know everybody's listening on our podcast. Everybody's going like, "Who's Darian?" Well, you have to talk to Jeremy if you want to figure it out. But I'm serious. The two of you would really hit it off.
I'm keen to chat to Darian. That's awesome. Thank you for you've connected me with some awesome people. So it's been amazing. And I think when you were mentioning about how high standard, but also being gracious, I'm interested how you navigate that when it comes to having genuine relationships in ministry, because we are a generation that really wants to do things together in an authentic way as friends. Like friends on mission is what you've referred to it in the past. But how do you foster that genuine, vulnerable relationships with people, maybe even family, who are technically underneath your organizational leadership, but also are your family or your close friend as well? What does that look like for you? How you do that healthily?
I'm gonna tell you about how Darian does it, because I think he probably does it better than I did it or do it. Here's one of the things he does. Like, he uses Hero Maker as like his handbook.
Yeah.
There's a book I wrote for the people listening to the podcast called Hero Maker, and it's basically, 5 practices for leaders that multiply leaders.
Yeah.
So he has ICNU conversation intentionally. He wants to, and does that. He's a young adults pastor in a larger church, but he has these ICNU conversations. And then after he has that, so many times a year, he'll take groups through the Hero Maker book. But in order to be in this leadership Hero Maker group, you have to make a commitment to be there every week. Now, he's not being a bully about this. He just says, hey, if you want to go through this training with me, because I do see a lot of potential in you, and I think you could be a leader. I think you could be a youth pastor. I think you could be a church planter. He says the ICNU conversation. He said, I want you to go through this training with me, but you have to be there every week. Now, if anybody in our group misses, we're going to cancel the group. And we'll meet again the next week, and we'll pick up on the chapter, because we're going to go through it chapter by chapter. And then he tells them up front, he says, but if you miss 2 weeks, I'm going to ask you not to be in the group, and you could try it again some other time. So in the very kind way, he's like, I'm really serious about you because I believe in you. I see this in you. But if you want to get to this level where I think you can go, here's where I'm setting the bar, and here's the expectation. And in a gracious way, he really holds the bar really high. And I think in the last 4 years, he's developed and released more than 100 leaders who've gone through this whole process, and they're leading groups, they're leading microchurches, they're leading ministries, or they're starting churches, or in some cases gone on and are staff members other places. And it's really remarkable.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome, because I find that's always a tension that I've had, is navigating the personal and the professional. And sometimes when you're in ministry, those lines are often quite blurred. And I mean, for you, for example, you've done ministry with your brother, for example. And for me, I've also done a fair bit of ministry with my younger brother as well. So how does that look like for the two of you, maybe, when it comes to planning a church together and continuing to do ministry with each other?
I think for us, I mean, because we started the church together, so we were kind of in it together. Yeah. And in some ways, it was probably better for me than it was for him, almost in some ways, because I was and still am his boss, or his boss's boss. Yeah. But like when we were planting the church and then leading the church, and you probably know this, Jeremy, like when you're brothers, there's things you'll say to your brother that you wouldn't say to your boss.
Of course. Yeah.
And sometimes, and our church got to be pretty big and we had locations everywhere. But I think the fact that John was on our lead team, and like he would call me on stuff, he would tell me the truth, he would say things. And so in that way, I think I may have been almost more the beneficiary really than him. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. Okay. And do you find times where you are just having fun and then times where you're talking shop? Like, do you divide those times, or does it infuse itself into one and the other? It pretty much overlaps. And now that, because last year I apprenticed a new lead pastor at Community, so we're not there anymore. Okay. And I am the CEO of Exponential, and John's part-time at Exponential. So I'd say we're kind of almost negotiating a new era. So like, we tried 2 different times this summer to try to, before we got on here, we were talking about golfing. Like, he likes to golf. I barely golf, but I was up for it. I was like, well, let's just take a weekend and let's go golfing. Because it was going to be kind of like, because he's also my friend, in addition to being a brother and team member. Right. And so we're trying to maintain that relationship. But the history has been, no, it just overlaps. When we're having fun or having family or talking church, anything could happen at any time. Yeah. And church should be fun as well, right? Like,
oh, absolutely.
When Jesus says the yoke is easy, the burden is light, like, church and ministry should be an enjoyable thing, and you can't take it too seriously. Like, we've actually created a memes page for our church, and that's been helpful just to laugh about things that went wrong in our church and all that. But I think, like, yeah, ministry should be enjoyable. Have you found ways of making that enjoyable in your life?
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, one of the phrases you used is friends on mission.
Yeah.
And when you have like a really clear mission that's something that's important, and your friends,
yeah,
I mean, it does not get any better than that.
Literally.
I mean, that is, I mean, and then, I mean, anyway, that's, I feel like that's the best.
Oh, 100%. 100%. So for a leader who might be listening to this podcast now, Dave, they are committed to multiplication, committed to doing the hard, the invisible work. They are checking their relational, their physical, mental, spiritual gauges, which is what your book Multiplier is about. It's about how we reproduce ourselves. You reproduce who you are. They're committed to those things, but they haven't quite seen the fruit of multiplication to the full extent yet. Like, how would you advise them? What would you say to someone who's in that place?
Well, one of the things that we do in the book Multiplier is we do give them like those 4 gauges that you mentioned, but we also give them 4 multiplying practices. And these 4 multiplying practices, like, I didn't make these up. These are exactly what Jesus did. I mean, the first thing we talk about is make disciple makers. So who are the people that you're apprenticing? And then the second thing is establish spiritual communities. So bring them together, because relationships are the catalyst for spiritual growth. And you know that through your work through microchurches. But then the third one is then mobilize new leaders. The same way that, and that's exactly what Jesus did. He found these 12. They were friends on mission. They're in this small group, basically. And then at a certain point in time, he began to send them out by twos. I think if you trust that process, and there'll be times where it's more fruitful than others. If you trust that process, I'm telling you, it's like a flywheel of multiplication. And what will happen is somewhere along the way, there'll be some people who may actually have within them greater, as far as impact, gifts than you do. But you got to be the one who had the ICNU conversation. You got to be the one that apprenticed them. You got to be the one that had them in your group, and then you sent them out. Like, I mean, you've heard me tell the story of my friend Troy McMahon. Troy was exactly that. He was a guy who worked for General Mills. He was a guy that I was making into a disciple maker. I brought him into this small group, a spiritual community. And he had, you could just tell he had, you know the type. There's just some people you can just see, they got lots of potential. He totally had it. And it wasn't long before he was starting his own small group. But then full circle, it was a few years later that he was like, went out and started, we sent him and 25 people to Kansas City. So about, 800 miles away to go plant a brand new church. And that church then started 3 locations, and now has started 4 networks, and has helped plant over 60 churches in Kansas City. And so never underestimate that, like, any one of these people that you're making a disciple maker and that's in your spiritual community that you send out, they may do greater things than you, which is awesome. That's what you want. That's what you dream. And so
for sure,
I would say, you remember, you reproduce who you are, so you want to be a healthy leader, but just keep trusting the process that Jesus gave us of those 4 practices.
Does it start slow though?
I think so. Oftentimes, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and again, like a flywheel. I mean, at first you're kind of like trying to crank the thing one turn, and it's so hard. And then pretty soon, and then, and it's like the weight of it, all of a sudden it begins to get momentum. And I think that's been my experience.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So stay in it is what you're saying. Stay in it.
Absolutely.
Keep it. And
just stay faithful to doing the things that Jesus did.
For sure. For sure. If you look back at a 25-year-old Dave in your ministry, what would you advise that 25-year-old version of Dave Ferguson? What would be something that you would tell him to do differently? What's the biggest lesson that has taken you decades to understand and to learn?
The 25-year-old version of Dave, because I was 25 when we planted community. Okay. My brother John was 23. Wow. My friend Darren was 21. So we were all in our 20s, early 20s. I think I was in too big of a hurry.
Okay.
And and again, I'm all for hustle. I think we ought to hustle. It's fun to work hard and see the results. I won't back off that. But I was going at it so hard, and I pushed even our volunteers so hard that first year. Like our band, I had our band. We were doing stuff on Sunday. We were doing stuff on Wednesday. They were doing setup and doing tear down. Basically, before the first year was done, the whole band quit. Right. They all quit. They were like, "No, we're not doing this anymore." And basically, they didn't say it out loud, but in retrospect, they were just going like, "No, you're being unreasonable, Dave. This isn't fun. It's supposed to be friends on mission."
You ran them dry.
Right, I did. And kind of in some ways trust in that process of just, make disciple makers, establish spiritual communities, mobilize new leaders, then you launch eventually the church expression. I think I was trying to get there too fast.
Right.
And I think you have to learn that lesson of, it's not, don't hustle more, multiply more.
So what would you run fast with? Like, what's something that you would chase after with all of your heart?
25-year-old version of me or now?
Let's say now.
I think the thing that I'm going after fast these days, really hard. We call it the 16% mission.
Okay.
Have we talked about this, me and you?
I think so. This is the tipping point when it comes to...
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah, okay.
So we think in the United States, if we can see 16% of all churches become multiplying or reproducing churches, if you're familiar with the innovation curve, if your listeners haven't, just do a quick Google search on it. Everett Rogers is the guy who invented it. And basically the premise is if you get the innovators and early adopters on board, and there's about 2.5% of people are innovators, 13.5% are early adopters, that's 16%. If you get 16% on board with any idea regarding kind of change, they are the people that are going to influence everybody else. They'll influence the other 84%. So if we can get 16% of the churches where multiplication is normative, they're multiplying, they're making disciple makers, they're reproducing leaders, they're planting churches, anywhere, we think that we can make that normal in the church across the United States. So I'm increasingly encouraged that I think that's very doable. We were at 4%. We moved from 5 to 6. Now we're at 7%. I think in the next 10 years, we can get to 16%. And I know we're going to get close to being done here, but can I got time for two more things?
Yeah.
So I think church planting does two things, no matter what kind of church it is, microchurch, macro church, meta church, I don't care.
Yeah.
And I think church planners ought to be talking about this more. I think it's a great source of spiritual capital. It's the best way to help people find and follow Jesus. But the other thing is I think it's also a great source of social capital. Like the very thing you said that you felt like Gen Z is longing for. Because when people find and follow Jesus, we know this from a Harvard longitudinal study, when people are engaged with a faith community, it leads to human flourishing. More than any other indicator. Out of 8 key indicators, human flourishing happens more often when they're involved in a faith community. So when a faith community is established, there's a lot of evidence for this, that people they become more generous.
Okay.
They volunteer more. They become better neighbors. So it increases social capital, spiritual capital and social capital. So if we can get 16% and that influences the whole, it's going to help more people find and follow Jesus, but it also transform society, and it'll just become a better place to live. And why are we surprised by that? When the gospel is happening in people's lives and Jesus is being lived out, it's going to be a great place to live and to flourish. So that's the thing I'm going after hard these days.
Yeah. Because it's not just churches that are impacted by it, but societies that are actually transformed by healthy churches that are multiplying.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, wow. We'll keep running after that, Dave. And you've done many things to try and shift the culture to 16% multiplication. And your book Multiplier is one of those books that is all about that, which we have referenced today. But yeah, as we mentioned, the crux of that is you reproduce who you are, check those gauges, your relational, you call them the RPMS, like rounds per minute.
That's right.
So relational, physical, mental, spiritual, checking those things, because we don't want to just start new churches, but we want to start healthy churches and healthy expressions of faith. Is that right?
You got that right. That's right.
Yeah, 100%. So give that book a read if you're listening to this podcast. I really valued it. I'm on to my second time reading it at the moment, and learning new things in the second time around. So would really
You know what,
encourage
too,
that.
if your listeners are interested too, if you go to the Exponential site too, and there's a site and it goes to exponential.org/multiplier, you can actually, there's a place there where you can actually fill out a place to make a commitment to be a multiplier. And there's different tools that over the time we're going to make available, even cohorts we're going to open up, which you could be a part of if anybody's interested in that. And honestly, I mean, my email is daveferguson@exponential.org.
Okay.
It's daveferguson@exponential.org. And if somebody's listening in, I mean, obviously you can ask Jeremy, he's an expert on this stuff, but if I can help, I mean, don't hesitate, reach out to me, however we can help, or especially if you want to train people and be multipliers, let me know how I can help. We'd love to help you.
Thanks so much, Dave. We appreciate your content so much, but for me personally, I appreciate who you are behind that content as well. Like, so much more. Like, you're just an incredibly humble guy. Like, I remember being absolutely petrified to like talk to you at that conference, like being this young person. I'm like, oh, this guy has just finished speaking, but I really want to talk to him because I really resonate with his content, and just the way that you just invested in us and you just wanted to help us and be so personable with how you related to us. It just honestly meant the world to me and my community. So thank you so much for just being the person you are behind everything you do.
Thanks. I'm a fan of what you're doing, and it's been a privilege to be friends. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, it's been a privilege to have you on the podcast, Dave, and looking forward to you coming in Australia in the next weeks.
That's right.
Come down under. Looking forward to it.
That's right. Yeah, or anybody listening in, come see us at Exponential.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Avenue podcast. I just want to encourage you to rate and to follow this podcast on whatever platform you're on, so that more people can be impacted by what God is doing through the ministry of the Avenue podcast.